the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this, why is this thing not recording? Stop that again. All right, play around with that, figure out why my audio recorder is not recording. Always something going on. It's like never dull, never dull. It's obviously not connected to the audio, right? Audio setup. Why is it recording through God? Very strange. All right, anyway, audio is not recording, so we'll have to upload it to Spreaker, to podcast apps through the YouTube by downloading YouTube audio. All right, you guys. Oh, Remo says his super chat doesn't work. That's not good. That indeed is very, very bad. Yeah, figure out is this a general problem or just a Remo problem? And let us know. All right, today we'll be talking about terrorism, Islamism, rape gangs in UK, which relates to the Islamism. We'll talk about the new San Francisco mayor. San Francisco has a new mayor. The new Puerto Rican governor came out swinging with something really positive, shockingly, that Alex would be happy with. We'll talk about a editorial by John Roberts, or not editorial, but it's something he wrote in what's called Judicial Independence. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about Taiwan. We now have 3 Super Chat tests. Thank you guys for testing with real money. It's always good to have tests in real time with real dollars. And Super Chat is working. So it's Remo's problem. So Remo says he cannot type. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a local problem. Maybe it's your computer problem. Maybe it's a Europe problem. Maybe we need to do some tests in Europe. Australia, anybody? Asia, anybody? New York, California? Are we sure that Super Chat works in every state? Maybe we should be testing every state. Okay. Soup Cask is already fretting. What is happening with Taiwan? You'll find out. You'll find out soon enough. Hey, Silvanos, good to see you. Thank you. Happy New Year. We missed you in the New Year show. But thanks, guys. Thank you, Robert, for the test. Thank you, Shazbot, for the test. Thank you, Equal to Reality, for the test. And Silvanos, thank you, and Happy New Year. So I think we got all of these guys. Let's see. We got that. All right. So we're going to be, another test from the UK. So we're getting Equal to Reality continues to test from the UK. I like this. This is a good way. Silvanos was traveling with family. Makes complete sense. Let's see. Where were we? So we'll be covering all those stories. Of course, much of what we cover is determined by you, by the questions you ask. So feel free to come in and ask questions. Finn Hopper says, anyone want to test if it works with $50 Super Chats, $100 Super Chats, $250 Super Chats, 500 Super Chats? We can keep testing. I know it doesn't work with anything above 500, but we're not sure about up to 500. Hopefully Remo will fix his problem, or the Dutch government, I think he's in Holland, will fix the problem, and he'll be back on. New Year's Eve show was great, except for the internet, ending the show abruptly, 4 hours and a bit into the show. But we did do a makeup. So we added a show yesterday, New Year's Eve Part 2. And that was a lot of fun. So that was another hour and something, 15 minutes or so. And we did raise about $20,000, depending on kind of before everybody takes their cut. So that was great. And it's 2025, guys. And in 2025, we have ambitious goals for the show, both from a fundraising perspective and from a viewership perspective. The really crazy out there goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That's one. And I'll need a lot of help from you guys in order to achieve it. And the others relate to raising money. And of course, reaching 50,000 will make raising money a lot easier. I don't want just bots, as followers, as subscribers. I want real people, a certain percentage of whom will support the show financially, but more importantly, real people who actually listen and be influenced, hopefully, or impacted or educated by the show. We'll also have Patreon goals around Patreon, around subscribers on Patreon. Probably looking for increasing that by, it would be great if we could increase it by like 80 new Patreon subscribers. We're at 220 something. It would be great to get into 300 Patreon subscribers, not by shifting people from PayPal, but new subscribers, people who are new monthly supporters to the Institute. Hopefully we'll get more of those. All right. Let's talk about New Orleans. So, as I think everybody knows, early morning on the 1st of January, a car, or a truck, electric truck as it turned out, an electric truck, rammed through, just like we see periodically in Europe, rammed through pedestrians who were walking along Bourbon Street. If you've ever been on Bourbon Street, just on a normal weekend, it is unbelievably crowded. The street is usually closed, and it's just a walking street. And, you have hundreds, thousands of people in the street there. A lot of drinking is going on. New Orleans is one of the places where I don't know how it works exactly, but you can drink alcohol while walking in the street. You'd think that would be, I guess that's illegal in other places, but in New Orleans, there's a lot of public drinking going on, particularly during different celebrations. And this year there's a Super Bowl, I guess, later in the year, and now there was one of the college bowls was scheduled to be in New Orleans. So there's a lot of people there, a lot of merriment. It was New Year's Eve. People having a blast, having a lot of fun. And again, if you've been to Bourbon Street, you know how crazy and fun it can get. And then this crazy, sick, evil individual drove his truck. He killed, I think the latest number is 14, injured well over 30 people, and just destroyed lives, destroyed families. There were college kids and high school kids among the dead. Just horrific. Just horrific. If you look carefully at the truck, on the back there was a pole with a black flag. It looked to me from the original pictures that a black flag would probably link him to ISIS. It later came out that it was explicitly an ISIS flag. He was also carrying a gun. So when he got out of the truck, he started shooting. Ultimately, he was shot dead by New Orleans police. I mean, one of the good things is that there are a lot of police. There's actually CCTV on the thing showing the moment that he takes the turn into Bourbon Street. Now, why there's not a barrier there. And they were supposed to, there usually are barriers there, and it was low for some. They hadn't, I guess, raised it, and he just took a turn off of the major street into Bourbon Street, and just plowed through people. Just terrific. Anyway, this is kind of something that we've seen Muslim terrorists do in Europe in the name of Islam. We saw quite a bit of it back in the heyday of ISIS in the mid-2010s, 2015, 2016. So this had that kind of MO, and I was expecting it would be a Muslim, and it turned out he was. From his name, and then Shamsuddin Jabbar, 42-year-old, born in the United States, in Beaumont, Texas, not far from Houston. He is served in the U.S. military for 10 years, actually served in Iraq, and had a pretty okay military service, nothing exceptional. He has been working at accounting firms, various accounting firms. The latest one, Deloitte. He's an employee at Deloitte. He also started up his own real estate company. He has 3 kids by 2 marriages. Both of the marriages ended in divorce. The divorces were not friendly, quite acrimonious. And it turns out he had been complaining about, being bankrupt, not having money, not being able to survive given his commitments in terms of alimony and child support and things like that. So even though he had a steady job, he was very much complaining. He attended a mosque in Houston. Now, it's not clear to me yet, from what I've read, when exactly he started attending this mosque, and who he befriended there, and when he was, if you will, radicalized. By all accounts, he seems like a pretty secular, nothing out of the ordinary. Just guy, Muslim, but raised in America and served in the American military and served in Iraq even, right? So just nothing exceptional jumps out in terms of any of his characteristics, in terms of this guy being somehow a radical Islamist. My guess is psychological stress, maybe the divorces, money problems, other psychological issues, probably led to somebody in that mosque, through that mosque, radicalizing him to ISIS. Now, it could have been done all online, but there's a good chance that it was done in person. A lot of these things are done in person. We'll get to the mosque in a minute and the mosque response to all this. But people, they're still trying to figure out, what exactly was going on. They found, I think, some computers. They found phones, multiple phones, computers linked to him. The FBI, of course, has sealed off the home he was staying at, and they've taken these phones and laptops, and they're trying to figure out what motivated him. There'll be a lot of speculation. There'll be a lot of rumors. We'll get to that in a minute as well, in terms of his motivation, in terms of what happened. But given the ISIS flag, given that he is Muslim, it's quite clear that, or at least the FBI is saying officially, that he was inspired by Islamic State, which basically he's inspired by a nihilistic Islamic ideology that is supportive of the destruction of the United States, just the death and destruction to Americans and really all non-Muslims. And remember, Islamic State is very much dedicated and take the dedication very seriously. This is not a joke for them. Very seriously, they take it as the establishment of Sharia law, global Islamic empire. They really believe in this. at some point, the FBI was saying they thought other people were involved. They have now saying that they believe this was a single individual. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a single individual, but who was radicalized by somebody. And it'd be really interesting to find out and to see, who radicalized him and how he was radicalized. The mosque, interestingly enough, the mosque that he attends in Houston, put out a statement to its adherents, to its, people who go to the mosque, the people who regular at the mosque, put out a statement to them basically saying, if you're contacted by the FBI about what just happened, don't cooperate, don't talk to them, call CARE. CARE is an Islamist organization, terror supporting. The UAE actually considered them a terror organization, terror supporting organization. CARE is horrific, supports the worst interpretations of Islam, the Islamism, but they're huge. They're huge in Washington, D.C. They've got a big lobby arm. They're the most vocal and present Islamic organization in the United States, telling him to call their CARE representative, to contact CARE, and CARE will facilitate their communication with the FBI. And at the end, it's something about the horrific events of the day or something, but no condemnation of this. No, it's horrible that this was done in the name of Islam. No, nothing. Just, hey, guys, you're probably going to be contacted by the FBI because you're part of the congregation. Don't talk to them before you talk to your CARE representative. I mean, just horrific. Horrific. And plays right into the idea that, there is and this is absolutely true. The reality is that given the free ride that Islamism has received in the West, and we'll get to more of that later, given the fact that almost nobody criticizes Islamism, and here I consider Islamism, call it political Islam, radical Islam, the Islam that believes in Sharia law, the Islam that believes in global Islamic empire, the Islam that believes that they will convert the West to being Muslim. The fact that nobody in the West, or almost nobody in the West, condemns them, the fact that nobody in the West identifies them as an enemy, the fact that nobody in the West condemns this as an enemy ideology, explicitly an enemy ideology. The fact that nobody does that, in spite of the fact that this is an ideology that preaches violence, that encourages suicide bombings or suicide killings, in spite of the fact that this ideology wants to destroy everything good about Western civilization, intellectuals in the West are afraid of it. Here's a stunning data point from yesterday. Right? I mean, basically, the same day that this horrific terrorist attack occurred, people went out into the streets in New York City with big banners and chanting, for global jihad. For global jihad. This terrorist attack was global jihad. This terrorist attack was the exact manifestation of what global jihad means. It means taking the Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, Iranian playbook and bringing it to the West, bringing it to America, killing people. Global Intifada. Global Intifada they were calling for. Global Intifada in the streets of New York, global Intifada. Which is this. They were calling for violence in the street of America in the name of Islam. So, these people, when they do it, this is an important point, when they do it, like the guy here, and like the many, 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 many hundreds of terrorist attacks that have occurred for the last half century. When they do it in the name of their religion. They don't do it as a whoops. This is just me being Saudi or me being whatever. No, they do it in the name of their religion. They do it for their religion. They do it for religious purposes. Indeed, they believe in 72 virgins waiting for them. So it is their religion that it is the core of why they commit these terrorist attacks. And it's their religion, which is the reason why they are so criticized. They're so rarely criticized. God forbid we criticize a religion. But it's exactly Islam that is at fault, their particular interpretation of Islam. When Christians commit atrocities in the name of their religion, then their religion should be blamed. Particularly when the atrocities are consistent with the religious teachings, which is true in Islam. When Christians slaughtered Jews on the way to the Crusades, that was evil religion. They were doing it in the name of their religion. When Christians Catholics slaughtered Protestants for being Protestants, it was their religion. When Protestants slaughtered Catholics, it was their religion. And now, when Muslims, in the name of Islam, waving a flag of Islam, kill people, it's their religion. Because it's a religion that's a motivation. Somebody is saying, why blame a religion? Because that's what motivates them. They blame the religion. It's not even me blaming it. It's the person perpetrating it by shouting Allah Akbar, by waving an ISIS flag. They are saying, I'm doing this because and for my religion. So we should take them seriously. And we need to start criticizing religion when it leads to horrific acts, no matter what religion it is. We need to blame the religion. And in this case, it's this interpretation of Islam that needs to be blamed, Islamism. It is a barbaric, Middle Ages, right? So I'll just take these questions. Are we blaming Christianity for the deaths that caused in the American continent, African continent, Australian continent? When they did it in the name of religion, absolutely. Absolutely. Most of the deaths in America were not related to religion. They related to a variety of different reasons that we're not going to get into now, but not religious. A lot of the extermination of natives in South America were done in the name of Catholicism, and therefore Catholicism should be blamed. Absolutely. A lot of other killings were in the name of religion. When they're in the name of religion, when the cross flag with a cross is waved as the slaughter happens, yeah, I'm going to blame the ideas that led to it. I'm going to blame their interpretation of their religion. And here, I'm blaming their interpretation of Islam, because that's exactly what it is. That's what's to blame. And they all share a common denominator. So what happened, truly horrible. Hopefully, and I expect, and you can call me when I'm wrong, that this is a one-off. I expect that this is not the beginning of some new wave of Islamist terrorism, because I just think that there isn't the energy, the momentum, the excitement that there was around ISIS and around Islamism in the 2010s. I think this is one crazy individual radicalized by this ideology and doing this. So I don't expect a wave of Islamist terrorists. Although, at the same time as this was happening, there was a massive explosion, a big explosion, in New Orleans, where a Tesla a Tesla, what do you call it? One of these Tesla trucks exploded in front of a hotel, in front of the Trump Towers. And initially, the thoughts these two were connected. The guy who died in the explosion of the Tesla Cybertruck was a 37-year-old, doesn't have a Muslim name at least, Matthew Allen Livelsberg from Colorado. Interestingly, he's active service Green Beret. So who knows what that is about? Active service Green Beret. Does this have to do something with hatred of Trump, Trump Towers? It's really, really, really impossible to figure out, or not impossible, but at this point we don't know exactly what the motivation was and what drove him to do this. But this was in Las Vegas. Did I say something like that? Did I say not Las Vegas? Everybody's writing Vegas, Vegas, Vegas. You know, there was fear that these two were connected. They're both electric vehicles. They're both rented on the same app. But at least investigators right now are saying they're not connected. Now, let me just be clear. The conspiracy theories out there, and all you have to do is go to Candace Owen to find them, are claiming that they are connected. And that this is really, they're just asking questions. They're not suggesting anything. They're just asking questions. They were both in the same military base. Maybe this is actually U.S. military operation. Maybe this is the U.S. military doing this, not Islamists, and I don't know what this other guy was thinking. Maybe this was a U.S. military operation. And Candace Owens suggests it's probably the Jews. It's really all of this happening on the 1st of January and all like this, and it's probably the Jews. So if you want to know the connection with the Jews, I don't know if Candace has articulated that yet. I'm sure she will. I'm sure that's coming. But you know, somehow Israel was responsible for all this. Luckily, in the explosion in Vegas, except for the driver, nobody was killed. 5 people were lightly injured. I don't quite understand what he was doing. If he wanted to really blow up the hotel, why didn't he drive the truck into the lobby there and set off the bomb there? Maybe it went off too early. I just don't know. I just don't know what exactly the motivation or the thinking or the causal elements there is hard to tell. So we've got one Army reservist and one Green Beret, you know, dying in basically what looked like terrorist attacks. But we will still wait and see exactly what happened in Las Vegas and what motivated the guy. Elon Musk and Tesla went into high speed, high gear to make clear to the world that it wasn't the Cybertruck that exploded, because there were a lot of people saying, oh, the Cybertruck exploded, and I think a lot of the mainstream media were reporting it that way. No, there were explosives in the Cybertruck that exploded, right? It wasn't the Cybertruck. And so Tesla, I think, worked all day yesterday to get data and to report on that data and to publish that data and to show that it wasn't the fault of the Cybertruck that the whole thing imploded. All right, let's see. There's certainly one other angle I want to cover here. Yeah. So right after news of the New Orleans, you know, terrorist attack came out, immediately, you know, within hours, there were reports. As soon as there were pictures of the pickup truck, the white pickup truck were released, there were reports of, and I think they made it at Fox News. Oh no, this truck just crossed the border with Mexico, came to the United States from Mexico. We don't know we don't know the immigration status of the driver, but the truck was seen crossing a particular Texas crossing from Mexico. And for a while on Twitter, this was like, this is immigration. Yep, see, this is what happened when, you know, immigrants just coming to this country and they run people over and they kill people. And it was all over, basically, all over Twitter. And then the information came out about the guy, Shamsud, the terrorist, being actually an American citizen, born in America, served in the army. All of this stuff came out, and people kind of backtracked from all of that, except the one guy who did not backtrack from that was our incoming president, Trump. Trump will not backtrack from that. This is Trump. After all this information was already released. This is January 2nd post. So post today. I don't know about Tucker Carlson. This is Donald Trump, your president, my president, our president. At least some of you, the ones who are not out of the country. Quote, with Biden's open border policy, I said many times during rallies and elsewhere that radical Islamic terrorism and other forms of violent crime will become so bad in America that it will become hard or even imagine or believe. That time has come. Only worse than ever imagined. I mean, there's so many things that are crazy about that statement, right? The guy's an American. What does open borders have to do with radical Islamic terrorism? Not this time. There's no connection between the two. Nothing. And then he said, it's going to get really bad in America. It will become hard to even imagine or believe. And then he says, this is worse than ever imagined. Wait a minute, this is not worse than 9/11. And I'm sure you could imagine 9/11 or worse. How is this worse than ever imagined? This is the kind of BS he spouts. He just spews out there. All to create a vibe, right? Connect this to immigration, even though there's no connection. Turn this into a bigger disaster than it is. I mean, it's horrible that 14 people died, but it's not 3,000 people. It's just, Trump is just, he's an irresponsible child who is now president of the United States. President of the United States. It really, he talks about in this post that he released, he talks about, how our country's a joke and the whole world is making fun of it and laughing at it, and this is, this is what happens. This is what happens when you have open borders with weak, ineffective, and virtually non-existent leadership. The Department of Justice, FBI, and Democrat state and local prosecutors have not done their job. They are incompetent and corrupt, having spent all of their waking hours unlawfully attacking their political opponent, me. It's always about Donald Trump, the narcissist. So, yeah. I mean, Michael Waltz, Trump's incoming national security advisor, says we've got to take a hard look at our defenses. First and foremost, close our border. Don't let any tragedy go to waste. Don't let a tragedy ever go to waste. Even if it's unrelated to the thing you want to do, don't let it go to waste. These people are nuts, and they're going to run the country. They're going to run the country, and we will see what happens. We will see what happens. And we'll see how, if there's a future terrorist attack during Trump administration, how that is spun. He actually called today, Trump did, for the CIA to get involved. This is the CIA that he said, is incompetent, and that he doesn't believe that he believes Putin more than the CIA. Now he wants the CIA involved. Go figure. All right, we talked about the people calling for jihad. Yeah, I mean, as I said, the mosque was encouraging people not to cooperate with this. Again, we just are not willing to call them out. We're not willing to say some of these mosques are being hijacked by radicals. Some of these mosques are now Islamist organizations. And as such, they are preaching an ideology that is the antithesis of America. These people need to be monitored. They need to be, and if they are inciting for violence, they need to be arrested and prosecuted. By the way, here's the actual announcement for the mosque, just so we're objective about this. Brothers and sisters, I'm sure many of you have heard about the tragic events that took place in New Orleans this morning. They're now classified as an act of terror by the FBI. I want to emphasize the importance of everyone to stay very vigilant and aware of your surroundings. The safety of our community is the most important thing. If anyone is contacted by the media, it is very important that you not respond. If approached by the FBI and a response is necessary, please refer to CARE. To CARE. It is crucial that we stay united at this time as we condemn these terrible acts. Please stay safe. Really. Imagine this was a church or synagogue and a member of the congregation that does something horrible. You know that what would come out is, please cooperate to the fullest extreme. Let's get to the bottom of this. Why somebody in our community would do such a thing. Please cooperate to the full extreme with the FBI. But the reality is that, the mosques are where this happens. And until we get serious about this ideology, until we call them on this ideology, we're in for big trouble. Intifada revolution. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? All right. So that is New Orleans. As new information comes out, I will keep track of it, and I will update you in shows in the next few days as we learn more about what is going on. But let me warn you of just the many conspiracy theories out there and the nonsense and horror that many of these conspiracy theories are involve. Right. So just stay alert to not spreading and not reinforcing nutty stuff, right? Nutty stuff. All right, quick reminder, we do have a goal for the first hour. Let's not start 2025 not achieving our goals. We need to achieve our goals, right? We need to make sure that the Yaron Brook Show is fully funded going into the year. Fundraisers behind us, that's great. But now we have to chug along and make our goals as we move through the year. Anyway, the first hour goal is $250. We're doing pretty well, but we're still $60 short. So just a reminder to maybe do 3 $20 questions. There's Remo contributing to getting us there. He must have figured out. You must have figured out how to. He can't type, so he did a sticker. That is so weird that you can't type. Maybe you said something bad and YouTube is limiting your access to Super Chat. It's going to be interesting. I will say this. I don't know if YouTube's listening. It will be interesting if YouTube does anything, does anything on this show. It limits the show, throttles the show or something. Remo says, has it ever been this bad in terms of what? So you got to give me some context as what being this bad. Terrorism? Yeah, it's been much worse, right? Some of us remember 9/11 and everything that happened after that and all the terrorism in Europe in 2010s. So I don't know what you're asking about. So see above. I don't see above. Where's see above? All I see is So Ron says he has the same problem as Remo does. But Remo's, has it ever been so bad? But what? I don't understand what in terms of what. You're saying see above, but I don't know how far above to go. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is my software. Chat appears in some places, not others. I'm saddened to see so many great businessmen groveling before Trump, kissing his ring. It primarily seems to me cronyism, out of pure fear from the government, not just lobbying for favors. Okay, I'll answer that now, given that we just finished that topic and we're moving into this. I don't know that it's ever been this bad. We'll see once Trump's term starts, but I can't remember any ever businessmen going to this extent. And it's Democrats and Republicans. I think they learned from Trump's first 4 years that if you have a relationship with him, right? If you have a relationship with him, you get favors, you can get stuff done. He'll actually listen to you. I think the guy who really learned that and maybe told others was Tim Scott from Apple, CEO of Apple, who, in spite of being a leftist, I think, or at least a centrist, or not a Republican, and not a MAGA, had kind of Trump's ear in his first term. Kind of, they had dinner on several occasions. They communicated regularly. He could call Trump. Trump would answer. Tim Cook. God, I don't know where I got that other name from. Anyway, Tim Cook. And I think word got out that you got to give him attention. You got to learn how to deal with him, and if you do, it's not only favors you can get, but you can get him. You can get off his shit list. That less bad things will happen to you. And I think that it's probably the worst it is, and it probably gets worse every president. That is, we're heading in more and more of a direction of more and more of a direction of cronyism, and Tim Cook is it was Tim Cook, and Trump is the culmination of decades, and he is by far the worst, and he encourages it. See, he encourages it, he embraces it, and he's not shy about it. He will actually publicly say, "Give me $1 million for my inauguration address. We'll have dinner, we'll chat, we'll talk." Like everything's okay. So yes. All right, let's see. Where are we? Yes. So let's talk about rape gangs. So maybe one of the most horrific stories I have read about over the last 10 years is the stories of the British rape gangs. All these rape gangs in towns all over the UK. We're not talking about one gang. We're not talking about one town. We're talking about maybe a dozen towns, maybe more. We're talking about gangs that involved dozens of individuals. We're talking about this raping of tens of thousands of young girls, many of them children. We're talking about grooming, and they often call them grooming gangs. We're talking about grooming them from when they're very little, 10, 11 years old, all the way up to when they're young adults. And, gang rapes repeatedly and over many, many years. We're talking about a situation where local authorities, from the police to local politicians, knew about this and refused to do anything about it. We're talking about parents who tried to stop it and were often told by the police and others to stop it, to not intervene. And this went on, again, for years and years. It was finally brought to public attention. I think, what was it, 8 years ago maybe, and slowly some of these gangs were prosecuted, but not all of them. And according to reports, in some places, these gangs continue to do this. Now, one of the reasons that this was covered up, one of the reasons that British cops did not go to the defense of children is because the gangs were all consisted of Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian Muslims. Muslims from Southern Asia is the common denominator across all these gangs. Indeed, one of the communities that tried to fight them off was Sikhs from India. And the reason, the police did nothing. The reason the police did nothing is because it would be deemed racist for a white police force, a white culture, to prosecute dark-skinned foreigners. And it would be Eurocentric, colonialist, neo-colonialist, imperialist, to judge another culture by Western standards. Even when we're talking about this all happening in a Western country. I can't think of anything more horrific than police just standing by as this happened. I can't imagine how betrayed these young girls and their families must feel and have felt. Even the feminists who you'd think would be concerned about girls, young women, being systematically raped. No, they're much more concerned about racism and colonialism and all that stuff. This is a real horror that continues. So I think today, the minister in the UK government, in a Labour Party, announced that the Labour Party, that the Internal Minister would not initiate an investigation across all of these different occurrences of gang rape, all these different towns. Why the authorities did nothing about this. They would not actually go and investigate the systemic destruction of the lives of young children. English children, most of them, by the way, were white, for whatever that's worth. Why wouldn't they initiate this investigation to uncover the truth about who covered this up? Well, the official statement was because the conclusions might be distorted by the far right and play into politically into their hands. I mean, what an admission. We're not going to investigate massive injustices happening. And by the way, they all happened under conservative governments. So the conservatives did nothing for years and years and years and years about this. And Labour now is saying, we don't want to give the far right excuses. But in other words, we don't want to give the far right an issue. But of course, the issue exists. And the reality is that, the far right is not right about a lot of things. But in making this a big issue, they are right. And the fact that the national government will not examine this, will not review it, will not have a commission to look into it, will not weed out the corruption within its own ranks, within the ranks of the national police and the local police, is a travesty, an absolute travesty. And again, This is all about appeasing Islam. This is all about not calling them what they are. This is all about not condemning a barbaric culture. They happen to be Muslims from South Asia, but these are barbaric, primitive, anti-human life, anti-human flourishing cultures, and anybody who tolerates the rape of young children, is a monster. And yet, UK politicians have tolerated this for years and years and continue to do so. And they should be called on this monstrosity. It is just horrible. And I don't understand how Britons, particularly women, but Britons more broadly, are not out in the streets demonstrating. They'll go out to the streets to demonstrate for Hamas and to globalize the intifada. But where is the outrage by the common Brits? Why aren't they surrounding the Houses of Parliament and demanding an inquiry, a national inquiry into this, demanding justice? I mean, some of the perpetrators, one of them, I read a story today, one of the gang leaders was a non-citizen. He served 6 years. He was released. He was supposed to be kicked out of the country. 3-4 years after, he's still there. He's still there. And the horror is, if you tweet something saying something about this, you could be arrested by British police for offending Pakistanis or offending Muslims. Well, let me say, if this is their behavior, they should be offended. We should be all out on the offensive, offending people who rape children. They deserve to be offended. And a culture that tolerates this, because imagine dozens of men getting together on a regular basis to groom and rape young girls. Did their wives not know? Did other men in the community not know? Did community leaders, did religious leaders, did the people not know? Well, all the evidence suggests, literally all the evidence suggests, that indeed they did know. They did know, and they stood by, and they let it happen. So it's not just the men who did it who should be condemned, it's the entire culture. And if any of these people are not UK citizens, they should be expelled tomorrow, put on a plane, sent back to Pakistan tomorrow. And the rest of them, certainly the ones who perpetrated it, should be in jail for the rest of their lives. Keys should be thrown away. And the people who knew about it and who said nothing should be prosecuted as well as complicit and put into jail. And this is what we have a government for. All the rest is BS. This is what it's for. This is its purpose. The failure of the Conservative government before and the failure of this Labour government in doing this, it really is, horrific. Horrific. It is a massive deception by the government. By the way, one of the reasons Labour might not want to investigate this is it turns out that Keir Starmer was head of, I guess, whatever agency was responsible for public security during parts of this era, and might have known and might have been part of the cover-up. At least that's what some people on Twitter are speculating. Anyway. This has hit Twitter, partially because the government just announced that they're not going to investigate. Partially because Elon Musk has got on this and making a big deal out of it. for all kinds of reasons. Some of them good, some of them not so good, but he's making a big deal out of it. This is not going to go away now. At least not on. I don't think it's going to go away on Twitter with Elon Musk's backing. It's going to be a big stink. Kemi Badenoch has tweeted about it. She's come after Labor. Of course, the response to Kemi, I think the justified response to Kemi has been, now you're talking? Where were you when these stories broke? Where were you when, conservatives had the government and could have initiated an investigation like this at any point? At any point. And you could argue Labor's not doing it because many of their voters are Muslims. What is the conservatives' excuse? What is the conservatives' excuse? Other than pandering to leftist notions that are so inculcated now into Western values that even the conservatives can't stand up to them. You can't accuse an entire culture of something bad. No, the culture that they bring with them cannot be allowed to survive as a culture. They either assimilate or they leave. And if they don't show sign of assimilation, they should never become citizens. So assimilate or leave. That should be the motto. And many of these communities, sadly, in Europe, whether it's in England or whether it's in Sweden or Germany, where there's not been assimilation, then they need to leave. And this is from somebody who believes in immigration. They need to leave. And believes in assimilation, by the way, immigration and assimilation. I think most of these people can be assimilated, but never if there's no rule of law. If the law doesn't apply to them, then they're told that they are special. They're told that they can get away with stuff that nobody else is allowed to get away from stuff. Yaron's views on immigration are not very objectivist. Every objectivist views. That's true. But mine are right. All right. So, the inability of the West, cultures in the West, to assert themselves, to recognize their own superiority, their own value, not on racist grounds, but on cultural grounds, on ideological grounds, is pretty sad. Is pretty sad. Somebody says this is the effects of objectivist open border ideology. Really? Objectivists have been running the world. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that objectivists have been running the UK and been running the United States. Maybe the terrorist attack in New Orleans was also the fault of objectivists running the world. It's all objectivism's fault. Did you know that, guys? Yaron, are you taking Super Chat? Absolutely, I'm taking Super Chat. The more, the merrier. I think Shahzad has just got us very, very close to the first hour goal, and he snuck it in just as the first hour expired. So we're $6 short of the first hour goal, but we are $256 short of the second hour goal. And, I'm going to call you guys on it because, 167 people on live, and many of you on live have never done a Super Chat, and it's about time you did to support the show. And Bob, you don't know what you're talking about. You're full of it. You're ignorant, and you're evasive. And if you continue spouting these stupid ideas on my chat, I'm going to block you. And you might switch names again and so on. But I'm not going to tolerate just people just spewing, complete lies. And they know they're lies, so they're evading because they've heard me talk about immigration enough to know that they're lies. All right. So let's go on to the next topic. But we are at 2:44. We got 2:56 to go to the $500 goal for the show. Unless we go into a third hour, and then the goal will go up. Yeah, here's a positive story. There are a couple of positive stories about politicians, nonetheless. So San Francisco has a new mayor who defeated the incumbent in the election in November. He will be sworn in the next few days. I think next week he's sworn in. I think I'm going to be in San Francisco for the swearing in. The new mayor is a heir to the Levi Strauss fortune. So this is a rich guy. Has been outside of politics. He's a non-politician. Center left, but committed to completely reforming San Francisco government. Reforming how it spends its money, what it spends it on, and dramatically increasing the efficiency of what's involved. Right? Of what's involved. So his name is Daniel Lurie, and his whole goal is to clean up the streets, clean up homelessness, revitalize downtown San Francisco, and bring San Francisco back. One of the first things he wants to do is dramatically increase the size of the police force. The police force in San Francisco has shrunk to 600 officers. At its peak, San Francisco had 2,000 officers. I don't think it should surprise anybody that crime in San Francisco rose when the police force shrunk by more than half. He is going to require, or at least encourage, government officials, San Francisco officials to come into work, to actually spend time in the office. And he's going to work on trying to lower office vacancy rates, which are above 35%, the highest of any major city in the United States, and try to get companies to move back into office buildings in the U.S. So this is going to be worth watching. He's got a lot of support from the kind of the tech industry in San Francisco. It's going to be worth watching to see. I mean, San Francisco has the potential to be the best city in the U.S. It's just got everything going for it. It's beautiful. It's certainly the most beautiful geographically, by far, city in the United States. It's got a presence of, a dramatic and significant, right? A dramatic and significant tech sector. And it's got a lot of successful people who live in San Francisco. A lot of venture capital money there. This should be a clean, beautiful, amazing, efficient, run city. It's always been plagued by homelessness, at least since I lived in the area in the 1990s. It's gotten 1,000 times worse, but it could even be better than what it was in the 90s. There is a real effort to revive San Francisco downtown, and we're going to see. We're going to see. And money's starting to flow into real estate there, and shops are moving in. We'll see. I'm going to be in San Francisco, by the way, staying at a hotel right in the middle of the financial district, which is kind of dead, but right in the middle of the financial district next week. So I'll give you a first-hand report. But I'm excited about somebody who is not a politician coming into San Francisco. And now it's a question of, can they get away with what is necessary to do in order to revitalize the place? All right, yesterday, a new governor was sworn in Puerto Rico. It's a female governor, and she came in just as the power was restored after a lengthy blackout that affected almost the entire island. Almost everybody on the island suffered from this blackout. And she was sworn in yesterday as the new governor. And one of the first things she said, which blew me away. I was completely surprised when I read about this morning. One of the first things she said, right, is that she is going to eliminate the renewable energy mandates that are helping to cripple Puerto Rican energy, that she is going to focus her efforts on bringing in more LNG, natural gas, building more LNG power plants, and increasing the amount of fossil fuels that are used to generate electricity on the island. She correctly has identified that it is the shift towards solar panels and wind is part of the problem that is raising the cost and making the grid unreliable. She also wants to increase competition. She also wants to look at, maybe instead of giving one private company the entire grid, maybe splitting it up and seeing if she can create a situation where there's some competition on the island. But pretty amazing for a governor, basically, to say we're going to cut down on our ambitions with regard to, or eliminate our ambitions with regard to renewable energy. We're going to focus in on more fossil fuels, focus in on more natural gas. Now, she'll get resistance. She'll get resistance from people who've invested a lot of money in solar panels and in projects and windmill projects, or rich people that are invested in all of that. She'll get resistance from the environmentalists and the leftists who dominate this island. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting. Really interesting to see if she can really get this kind of agenda passed, and if she can, that is amazing. I mean, that truly is amazing, and that would be truly awesome. And it could be the differentiating factor for Puerto Rico. It could be a competitive advantage. It could change things dramatically. So I'm excited about the new governor of Puerto Rico. Who knew? I think we voted for her, but I didn't know she would do something this good. Hopefully, there's more good stuff coming from her down the road. If you're listening, Governor, I'm always available to consult on how to make Puerto Rico the Hong Kong of the Caribbean, or the Singapore of the Caribbean, somewhere in between Hong Kong and Singapore, without the politics of Hong Kong. Just the economics of Hong Kong. All right, let's see. Where are we? Yeah, I want to say something about Roberts's. Robert put out Chief Justice John Roberts included in his judicial he publishes an annual report on the federal judiciary. And in that report, he included a section, I think a really, really important section, but a little shocking that you need to have it in there, but he included a section on judicial independence, which I think is really, really important, and clearly meant to tell Trump, hands off, buddy, hands off. We are going to be, the Supreme Court is not going to be your puppets. We are going to be independent. We're going to make rulings based on our understanding of the Constitution. Here's what he wrote, some of what he wrote. Quote, "It is not in the nature of judicial work to make everyone happy. Most cases have a winner and a loser. Every administration suffers defeat in the court system, sometimes in cases with major ramifications for executive or legislative power or other consequential topics. Nevertheless, for the last several decades, the decisions of the courts, popular or not, have been followed, and the nation has avoided the standoffs that plagued the 1950s and 1960s. He continues, within the past few years, however, elected officials from across the political spectrum have raised the specter of open disregard for federal court rulings. These dangerous suggestions, however sporadic, must be soundly rejected. Judicial independence is worth preserving. My late colleague, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, wrote, an independent judiciary is, quote within the quote, essential to the rule of law in any land, yet it is vulnerable to assault, unquote. It can be shattered if the society law exists to serve, does not care to assure its preservation. I urge all Americans to appreciate this inheritance from our founding generation and cherish its endurance. Now, that's pretty good, really good, and important, crucial, even when you disagree with the law. It is crucial. It is crucial that independence be preserved. The idea that the political system and the economic system and the freedoms that we have in this country depend on judiciary independence, depend on the rule of law, and the rule of law depends on judiciary independence, I think is crucial. I think Trump is a major threat to judicial independence. It's one of the things that made him, among many others, unelectable, but he is elected. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, both parties, it's not just Trump, have talked about ignoring the Supreme Court. It's though Trump is the one who would actually do it, who you could see actually doing it and getting support from his voters without any backlash. Right. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to do here? Let me just say we're $200 short of our goal. So we've got 175 people watching. So, value for value, guys, traders. Some of you have never done a super chat, I know. Some of you are not subscribers, so please subscribe. And many of you, you should like the show. If you're enjoying it, if you like it, if you get any kind of value from it, you certainly like the show. That's the minimal thing you could do to help the show, given that you're here listening to it and getting value from it. But for many of you, if you get value from the show, reciprocate by being a trader. And that is contributing a little bit of money for the support of the show. All right, final topic. Maybe I'll add one or two, but no, I think final topic, and then we'll go to Super Chats. This is a great letter published in The Economist magazine that I wanted to read to you by a guy named Glenn Weyl, W-E-Y-L. This is in response to a piece in the Economist that looked at which economies did best in 2024. In Europe and across across the world, developed countries and the rest. And among developed countries, for example, and I don't know. One second, what am I looking at? Yeah, in the developed world, is this? Let me just rank this. Let's see how we can rank this. Yes. Among the developed world, in terms of GDP growth, funnily enough, the country that grew the fastest in 2023 was Israel. Again, GDP growth of 6.7%. I don't believe it. Because, and to a large extent, it grew that fast because of government spending. So again, this is where you get the perversion of war it being an enhancer of your GDP growth. Greece grew 3.7%, Spain grew 3.5%, Lithuania, Chile, and you get a whole list of countries. Among the developed countries, the United States grew 2.5%, so it's in the list. So it's Spain did very well. Greece and Spain, fastest growing economies in Europe. And there's a reason, because both Greece and Spain made major reforms, primarily reforms that involve labor and somewhat shrinking a government that their economies are now benefiting from. They made those reforms as a result of the Greek financial crisis over 10 years ago. And now they're seeing the massive benefits from that. Right? From that. All right, so anyway, this letter's in response to that. Your piece on which economy did best in 2024 omitted Taiwan, presumably because it is excluded from most international statistics. According to the IMF, Taiwan grew almost a percentage point faster than Spain, which topped your list of best economies. Again, best economies in the developed world. Taiwan's stock market grew twice as fast as Spain's index. Its inflation was lower, nearly spot on its 2% target. The unemployment rate was held steady below 3.5%. This omission from global statistics continues a long pattern. Yet Taiwan has ascended in less than a century from poverty to an economy marked by high incomes, and from martial law to being among the freest countries in the world. Perhaps it is time for believers in liberalism to ditch the conspiracy of silence orchestrated by a communist dictatorship against the developed country with the smallest and most efficient state in the world. This is, that is a great letter, succinct, quick, and packing a powerful punch. Taiwan is unrecognized. It's not in the UN. It's not in the WHO, even though it knows how to deal with pandemics better than anybody else on the planet. It's not in the statistics of who grows the fastest, of economic growth, of economic success, or anything like that. It is basically a non-entity, even though it is one of the freest countries in the world, one of the most successful economically in the world. And it is completely ignored because people suck up to I don't know if it's a communist dictatorship, but a dictatorship, an authoritarian dictatorship in China. So it is sad, pathetic that this is a state of things, and that we allow it to continue. It would be great to find somebody with the balls, the guts to say, enough, no more. We are recognizing Taiwan as an independent state, and we'll include them as such in everything that we do. Imagine a U.S. president doing that. That would gain my respect. All right. I don't know why you guys on the chat, I'll just make a general comment. I don't know why you engage with these people. It's not that they're open to argument, unless you're having fun and it's good to kind of sharpen your own wits. It's not like you can convince him, or if you catch him at a contradiction. I mean, I'm sure many of you have already, and he said some pretty dumb things. It's really curious why continue arguing, although I do it as well, so I guess I should be blamed for it as well. It's fun. Will says it's fun. Cool. Keep having fun. I am not against having fun. Having fun is good. It might be annoying for everybody else in the chat, but I don't know. You guys will have to decide. Let's see. All right. Super chat. $194 short. So we're chipping away. Everybody who's watching right now, or do a sticker, like a $1.99 sticker or a $2.99 sticker. That'd be cool. And we'd get to the target very, very quickly if we did that. All right, let me thank some stickers. Andrew did a 99-cent sticker. Everybody should copy it. Reciprocation chat. I'm not sure what Andrew's reciprocating, but that's a $2.99 basically a sticker. So thank you, Andrew. You can do that to $1.99. Carolina did a sticker with some Mexican pesos. Drin, $1. This is great. Thank you guys. Where's I saw some others. Carolina did some more Mexican pesos. I saw some, Alan, $1.99. That's great. Kim, $1.99. Thank you, Kim. Silvano says, Happy New Year. We talked about that earlier. We covered those. Okay, I think I got everybody, although, I'm not sure. I thought I saw somebody do like a more significant amount as a sticker, and maybe I just passed it. I keep passing it without catching the identity of the person. Remo, of course, did a sticker with a question, ultimately, because he could only do stickers and he can't type in his questions. All right, we'll call it that. If I miss somebody, I apologize, but thank you for all of you. And of course, you who have not done a sticker yet can do a sticker too. It's a feature, not a bug. All right, quick reminders. Reminder that today's show is sponsored by the Ayn Rand Institute. The Ayn Rand Institute is right now offering scholarships for the Ayn Rand conference in Austin, Texas in February. You can apply. You can get, you'll get immense value from this. This is primarily for students or people interested in delving deeper into objectivism, people interested in delving further into studying objectivism, potentially becoming objectivist intellectuals. This is a great conference. Greg Salmieri will be there, and Ben Baer and many others. And you'll be able to schmooze with some of the smartest people in objectivism. You should head over there, and it's in Austin, Texas, late February. And again, you can get a scholarship. All expenses paid, travel, hotel, tuition. Why would you not apply? It seems pretty straightforward to apply. And applications are on aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. And Alex Epstein, who joined the show on New Year's Eve. That was a lot of fun. Maybe next year I'll have a series of people join the show just to make things more interesting and maybe varied. But anyway, Alex sponsors the show, and you guys should all be subscribers to Alex's amazing newsletter, which is a Substack, alexepstein.substack.com. It's basically talking points on energy, and you get talking points on energy, environmentalism, fossil fuels, and they're current, they're relevant, they deal with the things that people are talking about right now, and they summarize the issues succinctly and give a graspable, easy to communicate solution. And it's a amazing value, I think, to anybody who's engaged in kind of the cultural debate out there on any of these issues on any kind of scale. You can also access Alex AI. So Alex AI, which is, I'm heard, terrific. All right, that's sponsorships. I will remind everybody of this. You can support the show even better than on Super Chat. You can support the show by becoming a monthly sponsor, monthly contributor to the show on either PayPal or Patreon. Patreon is, I think, the easier platform for most people. It's also easier to change and adjust and make changes to it. So please consider joining a Patreon and becoming a supporter. We have a lot of people who are on Patreon without supporting the show, but please consider supporting the show. For $10, for example, you get free access, well, $10, the access costs you $10, but 2 ad-free podcasts. So all the podcasts, all of these shows on a podcast with no ads that you can listen to on Apple Podcast, on any podcast app of your liking. So please consider that to become a supporter on Patreon, $10 or more or less, whatever you can afford, whatever you think this show represents in terms of values for you. All right, let us now turn to the Super Chat. I will just mention that we got a sticker from John Parker, and Greg Lewis says, Yaron, the example par excellence. Thank you, Greg, and that was, I thought I saw, yes, that was Greg's first Super Chat ever. So thank you, Greg. That was great. So now we will go to the Super Chat. All right, James. What do you think of Italy, France, and Spain as a second home? Do you like one more than the other? What do you think of homesteading on a small scale? There was a movie that came out called Homesteading that looks interesting. I don't know about homesteading on a small scale. I don't know what that means, so I'm not going to comment on that. In terms of Italy, France, Spain as a second home, I think it's good. I think they're all great places to do that. You've got to think about the tax implications. So you got to make sure that you don't fall under a new tax regime and add to your tax burden, and now a European tax burden on top of everything else. You also have to figure out what the laws in each one of those countries are with regard to spending more than 3 months there a year, if you want to spend more than 3 months there. It also, where in each one of those places is going to be important. I think northern Spain is very different than, the northern Atlantic coast of Spain is very different than the Mediterranean coast of Spain, very different than Spain inland. Italy, of course, Sicily is very different than Naples, very different than Rome, very different than Florence, very different than like northern Spain, northern Italy. And in France, again, the difference between the north and the south is very, very large. So where do you want to be with all? But they're all pleasant places to live. I would not go to France, only because the French can be inhospitable. The Spanish are very nice, very friendly, but also very socialist and so on. Italians can be very friendly. None of those 3 countries do they speak very good English? Something to take into account. That particularly outside of the big cities, you have an issue with English, even in Barcelona. And I would add another country to that list, given the kind of climate you're looking at. I would add Portugal. An advantage of Portugal is that they speak better English than the French, Spanish, or the Italians. So for second home, for me, I would consider the southern part of Spain, or like Barcelona. I'm seriously really love Barcelona, or Portugal. Now I'll know more because I'm going to spend 3 weeks, I think, in Portugal this coming summer in August. So I'll know more about what I think about Portugal after I spend some real time there. Well, I'm also going to spend some time in Italy, but in Florence, and I'll be able to tell you more about what it's like to spend real time over there. So yeah, I mean, I think I think before I commit to any one of those, I would go spend a few weeks and test it out. Oh, I didn't notice that Michael did $50. He should get first dibs on Super Chat. Absolutely. So we'll start with Michael. Well, we didn't start with Michael, but we'll go to Michael now. Michael says, why are we less nihilistic in the material world than the spiritual world? Because you're right, skyscrapers keep going up, atoms keep being split, symphonies keep being produced, but interpersonally and spiritually, there is much ugliness. Well, I mean, again, there's a lot of, I think, confusion there, right? Because what is a symphony if not a spiritual? What is certainly an element of the willingness to design and to build and to create a skyscraper is all spiritual. I think it's fake to create a mind-body dichotomy here. Where is this nihilism? This nihilism is concentrated in a small group on the left and a small group on the right who would like to actually see things burn. And then it's concentrated in a general culture, in people under certain circumstances towards certain groups feeling and expressing envy. But there is no dominant nihilistic trend in the culture to demolish the culture. And that is expressed in the fact that a significant number of people still want to see skyscrapers. And again, that's a spiritual thing, not a material thing. They still want to listen to symphony orchestras. They still want to watch opera. And this is where people are very compartmentalized. They'd love to see some businessmen torn down and some CEOs hated out of envy because they are so ignorant and evasive when it comes to economics and when it comes to profit, when it comes to kind of altruism is applied to economics, and nihilism is expressed there. But in the rest of their lives, they're completely compartmentalized. In the rest of their lives, they're completely pro-growth and pro-progress and pro-good things. And even interpersonally, I don't know. I mean, there were a lot of people who are very nice interpersonally. Very friendly, very loving, people have good relationships. I don't think that there's nihilism rampant in the interpersonal realm. I mean, maybe if you're a men going their own way or incel or rabid feminist, then the interpersonality is, horrible. But generally, people are nice to one another. And there's still loving couples and loving people out there all over the place. So I think it's too easy to paint the culture with a big, broad brush. It's nihilistic. Oh, but what do we do with all these other things that are not so nihilistic? The culture's mixed. It's a mixed culture. It's a mixed economy, a mixed culture. And people are mixed. They can express nihilistic views in some areas and be non-nihilistic in others. So you have to accept that compartmentalization is real. All right, Seeker 57. I think Seeker 57 did a sticker earlier. I can't find it, but I think he did. But maybe I'm mistaken. But now he's done a question for 50 Canadian. 50 Canadian. And now we're only $100 short of a goal. So again, yeah, he did another 50 Canadian earlier. I thought I saw it, and then kind of somehow I didn't catch it. So thank you, Seeker. That's 100 Canadian. Today, you and Michael are carrying the show today, the Super Chat today. So please consider helping us get to the 500. That's 5 $20 questions. Again, value for value, and questions get to guide the show. They shape the show. Sika says, I recently heard that there is actual currency deflation in China right now, somehow related to a real estate crash and other economic problems in China. Most economists say that deflation is a bad thing. Are they wrong? They are. The answer to that is it depends. There are two types of deflation. Two types of deflation that are, one is good and one is bad. Deflation that results from productivity growing faster than the money supply is good. That kind of deflation lowers prices. Lowers prices across the board, just like inflation raises prices across the board. The monetary inflation, significant monetary inflation increases prices across the board. Significant money supply growing at a slower rate than productivity decreases prices. I think we had in the United States significant deflationary forces during the 90s and during much of the 2000s until recently. And a lot of that came from China. The increase, because of the role of the dollar all over the world, the increased productivity in China actually had an impact on our ability to import from China, lowering prices in the United States because the printing of money in the United States, as fast as it was, did not keep up with the increased productivity in the rest of the world. And that United States is unique in that we benefit directly from increased productivity elsewhere in the world because of the amount of trade we engage in and because the dollar is a reserve currency in the world. So that kind of deflation is good. And that's the kind of deflation the United States had in the 19th century for the most part. There's another kind of deflation. And that is when bank credit gets destroyed. That is when people can't repay their loans, companies are going bankrupt, banks don't lend money, and what you see is a collapse of credit, collapse of lending and of loans in the economy. This is what happened in 2008. This is what happened to a large extent at the Great Depression. This is what happened in Japan in, 1989. This is what happens when a big chunk of the economic growth is funded through bank loans and channeled to unproductive sectors of the economy, often real estate. And those sectors, then they're not productive, demand is not there, they collapse, and they carry the banking system with it. And that's what happened in 2008 in the United States and in much of Europe, right? That is what's happening in China right now. China has seen debt-driven growth by provincial governments, by city governments. The growth in that was exponential going into COVID. COVID triggered what you call a correction, a readjustment, realignment of real estate. So a collapse in the real estate market, that has wiped out many, many Chinese savers who had used real estate as the store of value for their savings. That real estate collapse has driven down financial institutions. Maybe the government doesn't allow them to go bankrupt, but many of them are bankrupt. And it is basically, eliminated Chinese consumption. The Chinese have stopped consuming as much as they did because they don't have a lot of money and their savings are being wiped out. And what you've got in China right now, under the surface, hidden from view, never acknowledged, never accepted by the authorities, you've got a massive crisis, financial crisis. You've got a recession and a financial crisis. And that is deflationary in the sense that some prices are collapsing, particularly real estate prices are collapsing. I don't know if prices are going down dramatically across the entire economy. It's quite possible because demand has shrunk significantly, consumption has shrunk significantly because of the economic uncertainty, and all of that is super destructive, super bad. So in that sense, that kind of deflation, and I'm not sure deflation is the right word for it, is really, really bad. Hopefully that gives a explanation for what is going on in China. Of course, it's a lot more complicated than that. There are a lot of moving parts, but Chinese economy is basically really, really, really struggling. And expectations were that the Chinese economy would be larger than the U.S. economy soon, and now nobody's projecting that. It's gone. Economic growth, to the extent that it's happening at all, it's not. It's shrinking right now. Is going to be much, much slower than what it was in the past because of growing authoritarianism. All right, guys, we are slowly chipping away at that goal, so thank you. James, how do you compare life in Asia compared to Europe? Since you've been to both, which do you enjoy living in versus visiting? Did any country stand out in Asia or Europe as one that you really thought was spectacular? So, I mean, it's very difficult, particularly it's very difficult to judge Asia in terms of living in. Look, I know a lot of Americans who move to Japan and love it, just love it. But to me, it would be very difficult to live in Japan. The language is so different. Like French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, they use Latin letters. You can understand some of it, and you can learn it pretty easily. Japanese is completely foreign. It's completely different. Culture's different. Just mannerisms are different. I love it. I love going to Asia, to a large extent, because it's so different. But I can't see myself living there. Japan is wonderful. South Korea is wonderful. Where else have I been in Asia? I've been to Thailand. Thailand's interesting because there's a lot of good things about Thailand. It's cheap. The people are unbelievably friendly. They probably speak decent English in a bunch of different places. So you can get along in Japan. It's very difficult without Japanese. It's very difficult with just English. But it's also poor and rugged and tough. It's not a developed country like Japan or South Korea. I've never been to Taiwan. Taiwan would be interesting because I've said this before many times. I loved China. I really, really love China. I like the Chinese. Now, again, hard to manage without English. But the Chinese were, at least from my experience, very welcoming, very individualistic, very vivacious, very engaged, very passionate and highly entrepreneurial. But it was China, and China's become much, much worse and very unfree, and I would never live in China, right? Never live in China. Maybe Taiwan's the right place, because maybe Taiwan mixes the freedom of a Japan and South Korea with Chinese characteristics or whatever. So, but I don't know. I don't know. It still would be so foreign. It's so different. The language is so hard to learn. If I were going to do a second home, I would do it in Europe. And one other element. Look, the reality is that culturally, I get more out of more interest and more out of European art and history than I do out of Asian art and history. It speaks to me more, particularly art. So living in a place like Italy and being able to go to museums and traveling around Italy and seeing historical sites, but seeing Greek ruins and seeing but primarily going to the art museums, Italy and France, and primarily and even in Spain. It just adds so much to the experience of living there. It's hard to match anywhere else in the world, even in the United States. In Asia, it's a joy. It's interesting to see the history and the architecture and the ruins and stuff like that. It can be interesting, but it's just not as relevant to your own experience as somebody who knows Western history. But art is a big deal for me, and I far prefer the art in Europe, old art in Europe, than I do the art in Asia. David, should we just ban political Islam at this point? The U.S. did outlaw political Shintoism in Japan, and that worked out like a charm, and called the crazy Japanese World War II death cult. I mean, this is the thing. If we are willing to declare war on it, then yes. So I've called for this for 20 years. Declare war on everything that Islamism represents, totalitarian Islam represents. Declare war, the United States, declare war on Iran, on the Wahhabis, on the Muslim Brotherhood, on Hamas, on Islamic Jihad, on ISIS, on Al-Qaeda, and basically give our allies carte blanche to destroy them and do some of the destroying ourselves. And in that context, absolutely, the West should say we're at war with you. You are banned. You cannot come into the country. And if you come into this country and preach it, we will kick you out. And again, I've been saying that for 20 years. And when I think Leonard Peikoff asked me, 13, 14, would I ban Muslims? I said, yeah, declare war. And you can for a while even say all Muslims are banned because I can't differentiate. And in my show on immigration the other day, I said, if somebody is an Islamist, and you know, one manifestation of that is his wife wears a burqa, then they should not be allowed into the country. Not be allowed into the country. So, yeah. It's a death cult. I agree. Austin, I did not miss your super chat, but there's a hierarchy of super chats. I answer super chats in the order of money, money attached to it. The higher the money, the earlier I answer. And then in the order they are, asked. And the reality is that we've got a bunch of super chats before I get to yours. Yours is down on the list because it was asked late, and it's only $5. I mean, only in the sense of the people who gave more money, and therefore get priority. By the way, we're only $34 short of our 2-hour goal, but I have a feeling, not just a feeling, I know this is going to happen, that we are actually heading towards 3 hours. So I'm raising the goal because that's how we do it here. It's $250 per hour. So it's the way it is. All right, Shazbot. Whoops, what did I do? Shazbot. If it weren't for the seriousness of the crime, I could picture the gang rape crisis and lack of response being argued on Yes, Minister. Yeah, but it's too evil of a crime, too evil of a phenomena, because it's a phenomenon. It's not just a crime. It's a crisis that you can't make fun of it. You can't put it into humor. You're right because of that. But yes, you can imagine the debates, what the debates would be. Richard, I recommend the movie Juror #2. It's a well-told story with moral tension and interesting moral questions. You're not the first to recommend this, Richard, so thank you for the additional recommendation, and I am definitely going to check it out. Jeremy just gifted 5 memberships. And I will be doing, well, I keep saying this, but I will be doing a members-only show soon. Yeah, okay, so you five know that you'll be just being gifted a membership. You should say thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Really, really appreciate that. Robert, you're right, of course. The banter in the chat is strictly for fun, and when it is, and for the sharpening the soul when it does. Since I was criticized for quoting Ayn Rand, for your information, my own manifesto is on my Facebook wall. Your own manifesto about what? Nobody should ever criticize you about quoting Ayn Rand. I mean, Ayn Rand was a genius. To trying to reformulate an Ayn Rand idea in your own words, why wouldn't you quote Ayn Rand? And let the other person show how the quote is wrong. Quoting Ayn Rand is not second-handed. It doesn't have to be, it can be. It doesn't have to be. Certainly not from somebody who's been around this philosophy so as long as Robert and knows the philosophy as much as he does. It's not second-handed. It's a succinct way of conveying a point. Ayn Rand was incredibly succinct and incredibly spot on. And you want to criticize it? Criticize what she wrote. Challenge her definition. But attacking the person for using a Ayn Rand definition, quoting Ayn Rand, that's just pathetic. Pathetic. Andrew, Contra Objectivism. In Christianity, the evil is potent. Is the premise to turn the other cheek tantamount to allowing oneself and one's society to be destroyed by evil? Yes. In what other ways does Christianity sanction evil? Well, certainly in turn the other cheek, but it sanctions evil in everything, right? Because it is evil, right? So it promotes evil. By promoting evil, it sanctions evil. So I don't know how to do this. So by the very fact that it endorses altruism, then every time somebody says it's for the greater good, it's for the social welfare, Christianity can't really say anything against it. And it must sanction it because it sanctions the premise of the common good and the social welfare. There's this, the altruistic sense of it is the way is what Christianity's endorsed. So it's turn the other cheek. The meek shall inherit the earth. Be meek, which means don't stand up for yourself. Don't. Oh, another one. Don't judge. Don't judge lest you be judged. Who are you? I mean, the whole issue of original sin, which is at the core of don't judge, because you're a sinner too, is a massive sanction of evil. If you don't judge, you can't judge evil. Can't judge evil. So that would be the beginning. You could do a whole show just on that. All right, let's see. Where are we? Did I miss stickers? I did. Wes, thank you. Really appreciate that. And friend Hopper, thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Let's see. What would your policy be? So Jacob says, what would your policy be towards organizations like CARE or similar shady international organizations? Would Confucius Institute come under similar scrutiny? No. Organization like CARE, to the extent that it supported the enemy, i.e. Islamism, would be shut down. It would be illegal to support the enemy. So, the idea is, so Confucius Institute, it was funding organizations that then engaged in violence against Americans would be shut down too. But Confucius is not doing that. It is articulating just an ideology. It's not political in and of itself. CARE is actively engaged in support of terrorism and terrorist organizations. Therefore, you absolutely have to care what it does. First of all, condemn it. And then if you can show the links to money going to terrorist organizations, shut it down. If Confucius organization is actively working with the communist government in China, with the Communist Party in China to, spy on Americans, then it should be shut down too, right? If they're involved in any way in violating rights, they're out. It's not an issue of speech, it's an issue of rights. It's not their preaching of an ideology that's the problem. It's their actions that violate rights that are a problem. Thought criminal. How come the Ominous Paralles is available with two titles? Are they both the same? No, they're not. So the Ominous Paralles is the one you should get. It is the original book. It's the original title. And it is basically comparing the rise of Nazism with what was going on in the United States at the same time. The other version, which I can't remember its name right now, I think The Rise of Hitler's Germany or something like that, pulls out all the American stuff, which the argument is dated because the book was written in the 80s, and just focuses on Germany because the idea was there is a lot of misunderstanding in the world out there, about Nazis and how Nazism rose up in Germany in the 1930s And it would be great if we had a book that just explained that without, in a sense, a distraction of what was going on in the United States in the leading up to the 1980s or leading up to the publication of the book, and then a prediction about the United States, which I think is going to come true, but hasn't yet. So that's why a new edition was made, cutting out all the America stuff and just focusing on the German stuff. But I think the first one is important and brilliant in analyzing what's going on in America, and very, very revealing in terms of what Leonard could see in the 80s that is happening in our world, today. All right. Let's see. Kim says, extra show. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for the support. Michael, can you have Jason Rheins back on for an interview, maybe to discuss his post-election analysis? I'd love to hear Harry Binswanger's assessment. I'm sure I'll have Jason Rheins on at some point. Jason's view basically is that Trump is even worse than I think he is, and America's even in worse shape than we are right now, because we elected Trump and because what's Trump going to do? I think Harry's assessment is very similar to mine. So I'm unlikely to bring either of them on to talk about the election, because I don't think, in terms of, I love Jason, and we'll have Jason on to talk about lots of things. But I just don't think it's different enough, and Harry's is different enough than my assessment to make it that interesting, right? Let's see. Let's start evaluating what actually happens. Jason is incredible on lots of topics, so there's lots to talk about with Jason, and he will be on again. James, are you going to speak at Nomad Capitalist? The idea on freedom sound close to objectivism. Any thoughts on having multiple passports, residences? I don't know. Speak at. I don't know what at is. Does he have a conference or something? I haven't been invited. If I was invited, I would definitely go. I like multiple passports. Because it just makes travel easier. So I would love to have an EU passport, and maybe one day I will have an EU passport, just because it makes getting out of Europe easier. But and have multiple homes and giving you the option. I obviously live in Puerto Rico, so the idea of choosing your home also on the basis of trying to minimize legally your taxes makes sense to me. So yeah, I mean, in those kind of terms, I agree with Nomad Capitalist. But that's his whole. I mean, that's a big part of what he stands for. Gail, most states or cities don't allow alcohol in public, yet they allow the public misogyny of the hijab, educating our youth. Yes. Yep. Jacob, this made me reconsider Tommy Robinson's vilification. If I was in his place, I would be so mad that being called racist would not bother me one bit. Yeah, I mean, certainly Tommy Robinson has been right on these gangs. He's been right on a lot of things about Islam. I don't think he's always done it in the best way. And sometimes what he says has borderline on racism. So it has to be cautious and careful. But yeah, I think that he was right on this, and he called on this issue. He called it very, very early, and completely right. All right. Austin says, how is wealth made? What causes inflation? And how would you market markets help the poor? How would markets help the poor? I mean, that is not a $5 question, Austin, with all due respect. That's a show. I mean, each one of those is an entire show, right? Yeah, I'll just say, Alexander says, I am very skeptical of Tom Robinson. I give him conditional ad hoc support. I agree with you completely, Alexander. That is exactly my attitude. I don't completely trust him because I think there are elements of racism there and just kind of right-wing collectivism there. But I credit him for what credit is due. He was right on this. All right, so I'll give you short answers that aren't going to be very fulfilling on these, but these are big questions, right? How is wealth made? Wealth is made by, creating new values in reality, and values that are valuable, that are of value to you and others. So you can increase your wealth in a desert island by building a hut, by increasing your efficiency of fishing, by creating a hammock, and you create a much more wealth in a civilized place by creating values and trading with other people. Fundamentally, it's the act of creation and trading, the act of production and trade, which create wealth. Production in and of itself does not create wealth. It's the production and trade that creates wealth. So you have to make products that are tradable. Working in any kind of job that is creating values that are tradable is wealth creation. So people trade for them because they're valuable to them. What causes inflation? Printing money. An expansion of the money supply basically is inflation. High inflation is caused where the government just prints a lot of money at a much higher rate than productivity, than the goods being produced in the economy. And therefore, you have more money chasing the same number of goods, prices go up. It's simple math. But I did a whole show on inflation. You can go back and listen to it, where I described that in much more detail. How would markets help the poor? By creating wealth. And since the poor trade, and since the poor have the opportunity to create wealth themselves, that's how it helps the poor. It helps the poor through trade. They trade for their values, and they get to sell stuff and they get to buy stuff. And both the selling and the buying makes them less poor. Right? In a marketplace where the market constantly is creating opportunities for them to work, create wealth, and makes consumption easier and cheaper constantly through the production of better and better and cheaper goods. Wesley, Happy New Year, Yaron. Krystal Ball likes to say the stock market is a graph of rich people's feelings, thoughts. Well, I mean, it's fake to say the stock market has anything to do with rich people. Much of the money in the stock market, if not most of it, is money of the middle class. Your 401k is in the stock market. If you have insurance, some of the insurance money might be in the stock market. A pension, those of you who have pension plans, those pension plans are trading in the stock market. So anybody who has a mutual fund, that's very much the middle class, is in the stock market. So I don't buy this idea that it's rich people. There is a sense in which it reflects people's evaluations, reflects primarily over the long run the evaluation of the smartest people in the market. They're the ones who get the most money. They're the ones who become rich because they are smart, and they have, therefore, more influence than the dumb money, if you will, people who don't have money. But in the short run, definitely you could have the emotions of the people trading impacting the value of stocks. Is everybody trading in tech stocks right now really doing the analysis, really figuring out what the net present value of future cash flows of these companies is? Almost nobody's doing that. So a lot of people are trading off general optimism, general pessimism. There are a few that are doing it off of real deep analysis. They're the ones that over the long run set prices. But in the short run, prices can move all over the place. And they are reflective of people's evaluation, rational or not, of different companies, different sectors, and the market more broadly. Mindspan wellness. How open should Israel's borders be? Which border policies should they adopt, and how can they gradually open them over time? Which nations shouldn't have open borders yet, and why? I mean, a very simple principle. If you're at war with your neighbors, you shouldn't have open borders. I mean, that's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. If you're at war and require a population that is going to be highly motivated to fight because the war is ongoing and almost permanent, as it is with Israel, you shouldn't have open borders. You should think about who you comes into the country. The people coming in should be people motivated to fight for the country. Israel's also a unique country in how and why it was set up. It was set up as a self-defense project against anti-Semitism. So yeah, Israel's different. And there might be other countries like that. You'd have to think it through and figure out, what is what. But in spite of that, Israel has a lot of immigration. It has different types of immigration. Immigrants who can become citizens, but also Israel has, my guess is much, much more what you would call work permit immigrants who come in to work as a percentage of the population than maybe the United States does. When October 7th happened, many people were shocked at how many people from Thailand were killed and even taken hostage. Philippines. Israel has a lot of Indians in Israel. There are a lot of Chinese. The Chinese are primarily employed in the construction industry. The Thai and the Filipinos and Indians are primarily deployed in the elderly care industry. But Israel needs workers like every other state. It needs workers to do jobs that typically Israelis don't want to do. And since Israel has a thriving economy, there's plenty of jobs to go around. And it therefore has a very, very loose or very, very generous immigration policy relative to a lot of other countries in terms of the number of people coming in to work, not to be citizens. For citizenship, a certain commitment to literally go to war is required, and because it is a state that is built for Jewish self-defense, it is expected that Jews emigrate there and then join the military and were willing to fight and are willing to do what's necessary to defend the state. So Israel's unique here. It's different. Are there other unique countries? Would you open immigration to Russians in Ukraine? Or for that matter, right now in Poland? No. You would say Russians are not welcome. We're at war with them. Or Russia has expressed its desire to destroy us. Russians are barred from coming in. As I said, I don't think mass migration of Muslims without any screening was right for Europe to engage in. Mass migration during civil war is problematic anyway, for a variety of reasons. Well, what else? I'm trying to think of different countries in the world. Yeah, most countries are not in the position, because they're not at war, of Israel or Ukraine or, yeah, I mean, most countries should have fairly open immigration policies. Supik ask, U.S., Taiwan, Israel, the objectivist trio. There's nothing objectivist about the U.S., Taiwan, or Israel. I mean, they're all relatively free countries in a very unfree world. So, no. I would say that in a perfect world, Israel would be just like every other state, and it would have open borders. I've said this often. In a world with no anti-Semitism, that is, in a world in which a vast majority of people didn't identify Jews as Jews, then Israel should be like every other country, should have open borders, and should not be recognized as a Jewish state in any way. I said that over and over again. That's not the world we live in. So the people who are, who are afraid, legitimately afraid, of living in places where the other will come after them because they're Jews, huddle up together and establish their own state. Completely legit. If I can understand, completely understand, blacks, particularly in the South, pre-civil rights, advocating for black nationalism, or establishing a black state because of the way they were treated by whites. Because in law, they were discriminated against. They needed to protect themselves. They needed to do something for their own self-defense. If you were black and having to force to sit in the back of a bus, not being able to use a water fountain or go to a beach with a white person, the white person people went to, I mean, it would make me so mad. I mean, that, I would be much more likely to be a Malcolm X than a what do you call it, than Martin Luther King. But the point is, the world we live in does not require any of that. The world we live in does not require hard caps on immigration or real vetting, because the reality of the world we live in is terrorists are not flowing into the United States across the border. All you need is and it's fairly easy to screen them out if you had relatively open immigration. And there's absolutely no reason to have hard caps, because immigrants pose no threat to you. Zero. The world as we live in it today, immigrants pose no threat. So, as we live in it today, it doesn't require it. As I said, don't make them citizens, and screen them for Islamism, for criminals, and for other things. So, it's the world as it is today that I'm looking at and saying the United States should have dramatically more open borders. I've described as before. There's absolutely no problem that immigrants actually pose for this country. Immigrants don't bring socialism. They don't. They never have. So socialism is a problem taught in American universities by Americans, embraced by Americans, not by immigrants. You can blame immigrants. You can make stuff up all you want. But it is a perversion and a distortion, and just reflects your xenophobia more than anything else. It has nothing to do with immigration status. I am not promoting socialism. I am an immigrant. Ayn Rand did not promote socialism. Leonard Peikoff did not promote socialism. And yet we're all immigrants. And we might have been held out because of a hard cap. So it's just all these excuses. I mean, just pure, unadulterated excuses to justify, for many people, not everybody, just a racist, xenophobic, fear-motivated excuse. And Brian Kaplan, in his little book on immigration, takes every one of these objections and shows how they don't really hold that. Because if I say, okay, so don't allow them to vote, ever. Don't allow them to vote ever. They never become citizens. Are we going to get rid of the hard caps then? Well, of course not, because they don't want them here. They literally do not want them here. It doesn't matter how they vote. It doesn't matter what impact they have. They don't want them. I agree, Wanda Freeman. Race is not real. It is only cosmetic. Yep. All right, Drin. The last attacks in Germany and New Orleans appear to be more signs of a sort of societal angst, exhaustion, and desperation than Islamic fanaticism. I think you're right. I think it's mental health issues more than anything else, but it's a combination. But I'm not seeing a big spike and a big rise in Islamism in the United States. It doesn't worry me that much, and because there's no, it's not being inspired right now. It's not like the mid 2000s or the early or the late 90s where there was a series of terrorist attacks and you could see the progression. Indeed, I think what Israel did to Hamas and Hezbollah probably has reduced the appetite, if you will, for terrorism among Muslims. Let's see. Jeremy, thank you. Esoteric Dichotomy, thank you. Really appreciate your stickers. Supkaski, bought my first ever copy of The Fountainhead. It's about time. But that's excellent. It is, you're really going to love reading it. Love, love, love reading it. Mindspan Wellness. Step recommendations for being accepted into ARU and being approved for scholarships into ARU and conferences. I don't know. I've never been a part of the evaluation process. I mean, what they're looking for is a serious, an expression of seriousness vis-a-vis objectivism, that you really are interested in studying it, that you want to understand it, that you're willing to do the work, and that there's a potential, not even a commitment, but just a potential that you might one day want to become an objectivist intellectual, if that happens. Ian says, Marginal Revolution just posted a video clip of Mark Andreessen talking about Atlas Shrugged. Sadly, he displays little understanding of the ideas of the novel, some superficial, some just wrong. Yeah, I saw that. It doesn't surprise me. He's been tweeting a lot over the last few years about Ayn Rand, and his tweets ultimately reflect exactly that. Exactly that. Better, though, that he talk about it so that at least other people are exposed to it and might actually read it. Austin, is MAGA Marxist future of GOP? I don't think it's Marxist, but it's accepted certain Marxist premises about economics, which are very prevalent. A zero-sum world view, I mean, Trump has it thoroughly. He has a zero-sum view of economics, which doesn't only come from Marx. It has a long tradition in scholastic economics, in some scholastics, in some other economists. They had a very zero-sum. But the most popular, I guess, expression of it is Marx. But MAGA is filled with that, and Trump is filled with a complete, utter ignorance of economics, and usually motivated or from the perspective of a zero-sum. And and I don't know what the future of the GOP is. I think it's generally a disaster. I think Trump is going to dominate that political party. But a lot of it's going to depend on how the next 4 years go. And we'll see which Trump shows up, how impacted he is by MAGA, how much he takes it seriously, how many, what happens in the world. Some of it's in his control, some of it's not. So we'll just see what happens in the next 4 years. We'll have a much better idea about what happens to the Republican Party after that. Finn Harper, why was the American conservative movement of the mid-2010s so receptive to Trump, his personality, his embrace of simplistic mindedness? Why was the movement so rotten to begin with? How did this happen? Well, I mean, again, a big question. I talked a lot about this in my shows in 2015, 2016, 2017. But I think a lot of it has to do with religion. I think Trump is a phenomena of religion. Religion, in a sense, rots the brain. Religion is what causes you to be open to authoritarian arguments, because it has an epistemology of authoritarianism. I saw it in the Tea Party. The Tea Party didn't want real answers, the complex, detailed answers that are required to address the issues that the Tea Party legitimately brought up around the growth of government and around the disappearance of our rights. They wanted quick, easy, simple answers, simple solutions. They wanted mindless solutions. And the religious right swooped in and captured the Tea Party. And then on their backs, Donald Trump came in and gave them the superficial, mindless, simple, stupid often, and often contradictory answers that they were looking for. So it really is the religious and mindless mindset that existed in much of the Republican Party, and the reason for that is, Ayn Rand called it in the 1960s and 70s. It's a dominance of a religious explanation, religious defense of capitalism, religious defense of freedom, which makes them ultimately mindless and ultimately sets up the common people who are not very intellectual, but also the intellectuals, unfortunately, some of them, sets them up for a authoritarian thug like Trump. And of course, religion and collectivism go hand in hand, and that's part of it. Okay. Clay, $100. Thank you, Clay. That is amazing. You have brought us much, much closer to our 3-hour goal. So really, really appreciate that. One more Clay, and we're really at the 3-hour goal. That would be amazing. But I don't know if I can answer your question. How do you view Daniel Dennett's approach to reconciling free will with naturalism, such as in Freedom Evolves? Do you think his perspective aligns with or diverges from objectivist principles and human agency? So I think he's wrong. I mean, Dennett is trying somehow to save free will, but he doesn't. But he is too committed to a view of naturalism that embeds causality in the billiard board effect. Event A causes event B causes event C. Objectivism's view of causality and of free will is completely different. Objectivism's view of causality is that things act based on their nature, that they have a certain identity, and their actions are guided by that identity. So the thing that causes billiard board B to roll in a particular direction, a particular angle, a particular speed, is not just, and not even primarily, and not even essentially, the fact that it's hit by ball A in a particular angle, a particular speed, but its own nature. That is, it has a nature that when hit by ball A in a particular speed, in particular, will roll in a particular angle. The focus is on the entity's nature, not on external events bumping it along, causing it to move. What causes the ball to roll is the billiard ball's nature. Now, when it comes to human consciousness, the cause of free will is the nature of man, the nature of human consciousness. Our nature is to have free will. There is no other explanation. There is no deep explanation. There's not this atom bumped into that atom. And so the whole issue of free will and integrating it with naturalism is a false problem. There's no reconciliation to be done. The world is nature. That's all there is. Its existence exists. In nature, there is such a thing. There is such a thing as human consciousness. And that thing, one of its characteristics is that it has free will. There is no other explanation outside of nature that can explain it. It's completely natural. because human consciousness is completely natural. Now, what is the physics explanation for it? I don't know. Nobody knows. Daniel Dennett doesn't know. Nobody else knows. Right? So this phenomena of consciousness exists. We know it exists. One of Ayn Rand's metaphysical concepts is consciousness exists, right? Existence exists, consciousness exists. And characteristics of that existent, that phenomena of the mind, that is that it has free will. And then the nature of free will, the nature of agency, the nature of choice is different. Objectivism doesn't hold that free will is your control, in a sense, of every decision that you make. There is one fundamental decision that you're in control of, and that is to focus your mind or not, to think or not to think, to engage or not to engage, to turn the mind on or not. Other beings don't have that choice. We do. And again, that's very different than Dennett's. Now, to be fair to you and me, I highly recommend, Clay, that you come on the show when I'm interviewing a philosopher. Harry Binswanger would be great on this, Greg Salmieri, Ankargate, and ask this question again. They are much, much more familiar with Daniel Dennett's work than I am. And they're much, much more familiar and better in articulating the objectivist view of free will. So I think my answer's right. And I think it's a good answer. But it could probably be improved on, particularly with regard to David Dennett's own work. So I encourage you to ask it again when one of the philosophers is on. All right. Raphael, this is the last question. So we will be done after this, 2.5 hours. That's not bad. Raphael, hi, Yaron. Do you think Turkey could be a major disruptive force in the near future? Its values are mixed, and being a NATO country combined with its political position adds a lot of complexity. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it could be. I think it's a very problematic country. I think its actions in Syria are going to be problematic and potentially very, very disruptive. It is. Erdogan has ambitions to be the leader of the Muslim Sunni world, and also he's committed to Islamism. And then he's a NATO country, which makes no sense. It's got a powerful military, or at least a large military. I don't know how powerful they are, but they're certainly large. Turkey's going to be providing a lot of angst and a lot of, challenges and to the Middle East in the years to come. Hard to tell near future or not, because Erdogan is also not very strong, right? So on the one hand, he's an Islamist, he's really, really bad. On the other hand, politically, he could easily lose an election or lose the public support, so he has to be careful. He treads carefully. There is a big chunk of Turkey's population who are secular, a big chunk. So Erdogan cannot just ignore them completely. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. We did great today. I really appreciate it. We're a little short of our $750 third hour goal. But we didn't make it all the way to 3 hours, so we're good. So we're pretty much halfway in the third hour, so we did well. Thank you guys for sticking with it. We got a lot of views on today. A lot of people joined us. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. We'll be talking again about the news of the day. We'll probably have new information about the terrorist attack, and maybe some new information about the explosion in Vegas, which was probably also an attempted terrorist attack. So I will be we will be on top of all that news going into tomorrow. See you all right here tomorrow. Thank you. Bye, everybody.